podcast up to 8 hours. Let's not go
Wow.
that long. Sounds like 8 hours would be like a filibuster in the Congress. Okay, let's see. Um, ask each one of you to choose one of the following topics to share with the group: substance abuse, divorce, family issues, work home balance, same sex relationship, workplace dating/relationships. And as you think about those, they're basically asking that you share a life experience and what you learned from that, and how what you learned from our human resource management course on ways that that subject could be handled better,
Mm-hmm.
and ways that we did it right.
Yeah.
So,
Um, it's two of them that are kind of go hand in hand is the divorce and family issues, and then work and home balance.
hmm
Just because, like that story I was telling you about, a coworker I had who was going through divorce. He definitely brought that into work with him, which I don't blame him. But at the same time, it was like, it'll get to a certain point where you're like, okay, do we say something? Because there's like lashing out at people and
sometimes they don't even
constantly,
realize they're doing it.
no, exactly. And so it's like, do you mention it? Do you like our, for example, our work didn't have an HR department. Well, they did. We had an HR representative, but we didn't have like a,
Trained professional.
yeah, like, or a program in our work where it was like, oh, well, he could just go talk to her about it and they could talk it through or whatever. They didn't have any of that. And so, um, yeah, that's just kind of an experience that I had where it was kind of like I didn't know. I mean, in this course, we've learned a ton of
But
things that you
sometimes they're
could do,
lashing
but
out and you aren't even aware of the problem.
oh, yeah, I didn't have any idea until he told me about it later. So
Mm.
it started to make a little bit more sense. But like I said, it's I didn't know what to do. But taking this course, it shows you just how many tools are available if a good human resource department is set up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it was interesting too, though, Christy. We were talking about how our reading said you're not supposed to give them solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be was it a workplace lawyer?
Yeah.
Yeah, direct them to the resources. Yeah, I
Yes.
thought that was interesting too. I mean, I can see how that's good advice. Hard advice, but good advice.
And as an individual, when you're going through something like that, because I've gone through something, I've been divorced before, right, and stuff, and it is to let your coworker know what's going on and ask them to, if I'm being testy, let me know, or something. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
like we said, sometimes you're not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you're holding it in and you don't let the people around you know what's going on, they don't understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going through something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be divorce. Like we're talking home work, um, like when you have a sick family member or something, and they may be way off, but something will trigger an emotional response, and you just cry at every little thing,
Mm-hmm.
and your poor coworkers are wondering what in the world did I do? Sometimes you have
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
let them know what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about you, Chris? Do you have something you would like to share?
I'm gonna admit it. My work experience is much less than both of you. I'm thinking I'm a stay-at-home mom right now, but when I was working, I did have a coworker. She was going through a divorce, sort of at the time. I mean, they were living together, they weren't married, and they had kids, but
Still a breakup.
also, yeah, but also kind of substance abuse too. I mean, it wasn't illegal substances, but she was coming into work with really big hangovers. Like she'd stayed out late drinking and she'd come in with her big sunglasses on and she'd admit it. And she got her job done. She wasn't as effective. I feel like, but she did get her job done still, but it's like when do you say something?
No,
Like,
exactly. Where's and that's the thing is that's the hard part is because that's what it tells you is not to like try to relate like, oh, I've definitely been through that. It's tough, but just like
mhm.
we talked about, direct them to the resources because sometimes they don't want to hear that. I mean, there's times even though it's not like divorce or anything like that, but it's family issues or that work home balance spilling into your work time where you've for example, I work at the school. I mean, I've said that a million times, but trying to balance like exams and projects and things like that. And then I go to work and I'm stressed out. So sometimes I'm not in the happiest mood at work and people notice, and it can affect other people. So at what point do you say, hey, you're kind of being a little obnoxious, or you're taking it out on
You're
other
being
people?
a pain
Like,
on
yeah,
everybody.
exactly. At what point do you mention that to that person?
You have to do
Because
that. You have to do that with your spouses sometimes.
yeah,
They're stressed out about work,
absolutely.
and they come home and they take it out on you, and they don't realize they're doing it at home also.
So you grab them by the face and you
you look at them and go, I understand you have this big project at work, but I am not your dumping ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a key to a good relationship. I mean, you don't mind them. You realize they have issues and you want them to be able to vent, but at the same time, it's like, I'm sorry, I have a life too.
Yeah, and
Don't
the thing
dump it
is,
on.
like I said, with the proper resources, that becomes a lot easier, because instead of just being like going to the person and saying, hey, if you want to talk about your divorce, go talk to the HR rep. Like, instead of that, like, you could talk to HR and say, hey, I've noticed that this person, they've been going through a lot. And especially if it's not like a secret, like, I mean, at my work, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't like, oh, you shouldn't tell me that because it's not your business. It's like, it wasn't a secret. Everybody knew. So instead of that, just saying, hey, yeah, like, obviously, that he's going through a divorce. If you want to refer him some help or whatever, or if you're close enough with the person, direct them to those resources. That it eliminates that, hey, you need to get help kind of conversation. So
Yeah. Like, the office I worked in was just, there were like 4 of us. There was our boss and then the other 3 of us. Like, who do you direct them to? There's no HR department for an office that small.
No.
Outside sources? What do they have here?
Yeah, I would say maybe see if you can find, that's true. They're not members of if they are members of the church, there are family services, and there are the counties and stuff usually do have some kind of services. Maybe you should check your own healthcare plan and see if there's any counseling services.
Yeah,
maybe.
And make that as a suggestion.
Yeah.
You do know our health plan offers free counseling service.
No, exactly.
I don't want to say. I would never want to say that to someone, but yeah.
That's what I was saying. It's just like, it's
you go
there's resources that speak for themselves instead of,
maybe
hey,
you
can
anonymously
get counseling,
print something off the website and leave it on the
oh my gosh, anonymously, yeah.
Send out an email to everybody.
Just passive aggressive.
Huh? What?
Just being funny.
But you know what I mean? Send out an email to
totally
everyone.
agree.
Did y'all realize that our health plan includes counseling sessions? Substance abuse. Have either one of you had to deal with that?
Yes. Yeah, I've had similar things where people, I mean, not that I would know, but there's people who came into work or they were high or drunk and riding off the party from the night before. And so it's just, it's pretty clear, but it's kind of a job where it's like, it's almost like construction, but not as dangerous, I guess. You take apart cars, and that was my job. And so it was like, as long as that doesn't affect your ability to take apart cars, like, and you're not under heavy machinery.
I was going to say, if you're under the car, that could be dangerous.
Yeah. For the most part, it's not. It's just dismantling and stuff. But yeah, it's just kind of funny that way, where it's like, well, nobody says anything. People kind of turn a blind eye, which not always the best, obviously. But
the culture in the military has changed. But when I came in the military, drinking and smoking were almost expected.
Part of the job.
Yes. We would have teams that would come in and we'd take them out for, they were inspection teams, and you were expected to take them out drinking and entertaining them, And it was funny because one time we had the colonel, and he was and this before I joined the church, but they expected us to go out and take them out, right? And they kept us up till 3 a.m. with us partying with these guys, right? And then we had to be back at work at 7, and then he's mad because he says we all smell like liquor, even though we've been home and taking showers. But but some of the I was telling Skylar about one yesterday that we had this master sergeant, and he started not showing up for his shifts, and we're talking security police, so this is someone who carries a gun. And they finally sent the commander to check on him, and he was 3 times the legal limit.
Holy cow.
Whoa.
And she goes, how could he even be alive? And I says, I grew up with an alcoholic father, so I understood. I says, you don't understand. And she goes, I saw him last night and he wasn't drunk last night. How did he get drunk that fast and that much? And I'm like, they keep it in their system all the time, and it doesn't take as much to get them drunk. You know, one drink and they're drunk again because they never really sobered up. And she just couldn't understand, and couldn't understand how he could be alive, you know, at all. And I says, you don't understand, because they build up tolerance for it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this, and substance abuse can be kind of hard, because it's like, my husband is a chronic pain patient, and for a while there, they had him on legal drugs, and he got to where he was getting annoyed and abusive because the drugs had made him an addict, and we had to wean him off of them.
Oh.
You know, and it was really hard. But you know, and that's why it's not always illegal drugs. People always think of the illegal drugs are, and I told y'all about the sexual harassment. I watched a first sergeant. He was up to become a first sergeant, and he was betting with this airman about who was going to sleep with this girl.
Wow.
And when I brought him up on charges, because he's made that poor little airman, and he made me uncomfortable as a female sitting there at the table, and you kept telling him to be quiet and shut up, and he wouldn't listen, because we finally get to a point where you just said, shut up, you're being stupid, right? And went to the commander, and all. They found out he was a closet alcoholic, and he'd been drinking really bad and doing a really good job of hiding. Some people hide it really well. So have y'all ever had to do with working and dating relationships?
Not really. Not personally, anyways. Like, I've seen it
I've been
in the office before, but...
Right? Did you mean I've been it? It's bad. It's not something you mean for it to happen, but when you work together a lot, it does. You know? I was telling him that when me and my ex-husband were going through our divorce, I'd been in my unit for 3 years, and then he was transferring in, and because that was the only place he could do his job. I was a clerk, so they could move me, and they made me move. They took his side. It was really upsetting, because they'd seen how awful he'd been and had an affair on me and things. But they took his side because he was their member, and I was being kicked out of the unit. So, yep. So
that's unfortunate.
But the best thing to do is to stay out of it. But I was telling Skylar, I'd walk into the break room and everybody get quiet. And I'd finally had it. It's been going on for like 2 weeks. And I walked in one day and they all got quiet. And I looked at them and I says, I wish I was having half as much fun as you people thought I was. But the smaller the unit is, the worse it is. It's like Christy says, because, you know, it doesn't disperse. And you have nowhere to put the person. So, but you have to learn to compartmentalize things, unfortunately. Keep things, and same with work-home balance. Sometimes you have to learn to, it can be really difficult in the military if you have work intel. You know all these things that are going on in the world, and then you come home and you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
So, and you need a spouse that understands you can't talk about it, because they get all upset. Some of them get upset about it. Why can't you tell me? Yeah. Or if you work in the HR department, because, you know, personnel for the military is kind of like HR, and people come in and they go, so what's he in trouble for? Why is he being, you know, punished or whatever, you know? And you're like, I can't tell you. You go, you know, I can't tell you. Why are you asking? So, so have you learned some skills in this last, I guess, semester that would help you in the future?
Yeah, just handling conflict in general. I mean, it's a big thing that it happens everywhere, whether it's military, government job, just a regular 9 to 5, like anywhere you go, there's going to be conflict that you'll have to deal with, maybe not as an HR representative in general, but maybe as an employee or an employer.
As a friend.
And so, yeah, exactly. So it's been nice to see that there are ways to, or proper techniques rather, on how to address that and how to handle it without making it worse. So I think that's been really beneficial in this class.
Christy, have you seen any other societal issues that affect the workplace?
Oh,
She goes, that's hard. Why'd you do that?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Till I asked the question, I couldn't think of any. And now they popping in my head now.
I don't know. I can't think of any in particular. I mean,
I think incidents like 9/11, the recent, Jewish temple shootings, even George W. Bush's passing, all those affect work more than we realize. Issues in general that happen out there. Sometimes, and take that into account. Sometimes it's like, have you? Yeah, y'all aren't either one of you, I think, old enough to have lost anyone like your parents, have you? It's really weird. It's like that's probably one of the things affecting him is his Brad's birthday was the 12th, which was 2 days ago. When it comes up in your mom or dad's birthday or their anniversary or the date they died, as time passes and it gets to be a decade or 2 decades, you're not as conscious of that date, but it'll be in your subconscious, and you'll be in a weird mood and you won't understand why until you make the connection sometimes. Weird, right? But we're all people and stuff affects us all differently. So, and I think that's one of the hard things for some people have is learning to accept people as individuals and that they're not, and that's why you're not supposed to go, oh, I've been through that, because everybody's situation's different.
Yep. So, not machines. Things affect us.
Yeah, unfortunately. But we used to just suck it up and didn't pay any attention to it. That's how they used to tell us to handle it.
To get over it.
Yeah, they just said, buck up, buddy. It's like they used to send you to work sick, and you would have the flu literally, and your meds were piled up on your table, but you were still supposed to be at work. And now they say, don't come to work because we don't want you making everybody else sick.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a better idea, but
and then the last is asking, and how do y'all think things will change in 10 years?
I don't know. It's hard to say because the way things look, it seems like there will be more regulation and more issues that come up than we've already discussed, just because there's just been so many changes, and you have all these liberal laws being passed and things like that, where in certain classrooms around the country you have to be certainly like politically correct, and you're not allowed to talk about certain things. And so I imagine in the workplace that could be a similar thing, where to avoid lawsuits that companies might just decide to.
We didn't cover same-sex relationships, but it's something similar is like when I first went on active duty in 1980, they had all these form letters, right? And all the letters would be addressed to the wife, and so, but there were they hadn't thought about women working and having to address them to the men's husband, the wives' husbands and stuff. Learning to type things more neutral gender, if that makes any sense, and using the word spouse instead of wife, and sometimes can be annoying, but at the same time you can understand where that comes from, and I can see things changing even more in the future. I even have found it at church. Sometimes it's difficult because if you're working like in the primary, you don't always know all the kids' situations, as far as maybe grandma's bringing them to church and mom's not inactive and she's married, she's living with someone who's not a member, and society's getting more and more complicated all the time.
Definitely.
And for me, the workplace, everything is becoming more computerized. Androids, we're gonna have to worry about handling their feelings. I used to swear that the Xerox machine knew you when you were in a hurry, and it only jams when you're in a hurry.
Mhm.
through your
Agree.
printer.
I believe it.
You'll check before you start your project, and you have plenty of ink, and then you start to print, and it says you're out of ink. That's what it seems like, doesn't it? Like it's retaliating against you. So, but it says, they used to say the same, but we laugh, but they used to say the same thing about slaves, that they weren't human, and that we didn't need to treat them this. That's how. If you read some of the old textbooks and text things, and that's how they treated them. They didn't think of them as.
Those ideals are just so crazy to me.
Yeah,
I know.
But will we be saying the same thing about computers in 20 years, 30 years?
Oh, I hope not. Computers don't have feelings.
Let's hope not. We may find out otherwise, though.
I know. It'll be weird. I wonder if we're all going to be working from home.
My physiology class, the more I learn and what parts I understand remind me so much of computer programming, it's scary. How our systems work. So we're like, maybe we're just organic computers.
With a soul.
With a soul. Yep.
You can't get soul to a computer.
So, not yet. They're working on it. Or consciousness, I should say. Not necessarily a soul, but. So. And that was, I think that covers up. Anyone else want anything else about society?
No.
Okay. I'm going to stop our broadcast then.